Yeah. I was brought up in the Lord from the age of 10, and I had a really great childhood in the Lord. Happy, like Jaden said, you'd pray for things and they'd be healed, people would be healed and miracles would happen around me, and that was just expected. I had a very vibrant personality and I just loved the kids' camps and, you know, like I said, had a great childhood. The last thing I would think of is having some sort of anxiety or depression or a nervous breakdown, and that's exactly what did happen to me at the age of 19. Things didn't go accordingly. They weren't, well, they were big things to me. So a boyfriend break up in the Lord, my sister, who is my best friend, got married, my grandfather had a stroke, and this all happened within a couple of weeks. And I thought, okay, I've got a broken heart, you know, that's going to take time. But months went on after that and I wasn't getting better, and I was really scrounging in my heart thinking I'm going down, and I'm going down in a big way. My personality changed. I got a cadetship in journalism given to me. I quit. I went into anxiety, that went into depression, that went into deep depression, that went into a nervous breakdown. The condemnation then started. I shouldn't have this in the Lord. I shouldn't be depressed. I should be getting a healing. People prayed for me and it just didn't happen. And I really felt condemned. I felt like I can't go to meetings because of the young people. I'm not getting the healing. So the depression got worse. I then became suicidal. So this is a year into it. It got worse. I had to move out of mum and dad's house because mum got palsy of the face and from my stress, and I didn't care. I swore at my sister and I didn't care. So I got anorexic, and it just got worse, and I couldn't really take my life because I knew that I had the Spirit. So that was like, I wanted to commit suicide and I did try, but I knew the Lord stopped that several times. I had an amazing brother-in-law that took me in with my sister who just got married, and they took me in. I couldn't live with anybody. I felt like I was a burden to everybody. And he took me in and he counselled me every night. And poor things, they just got married and they've got this lunatic sister-in-law moving in with them. But he was so used of the Lord because, you know, I couldn't look at my mum because I'd really, she was going through a lot, just looking at her daughter disintegrate. And where was the Lord in all this? I got cranky and I just was like, okay, we'll go and see a doctor and get on medication. And, you know, I ended up witnessing to the psychiatrist, and I walked out, I said, Mum, that was a lot of good. He didn't do me any good. I ended up witnessing to him, you know, and something that I don't really believe in anymore. Like, and the Lord was always with me. So turning point was 3 months sitting in front of the television day after day, watching the whole world go round, watching the family do all their work, sitting in the lounge room depressed, skinny, not eating, wanting to take my own life, not being able to pray, having the condemnation, going, I don't know what to do because I'm stuck. Lord, it was pouring with rain. And I said, Lord, if you're really there, like you do when you go to receive the Holy Spirit, I had to do that again. I had to humble myself because I had become quite hard about the Lord healing me. I thought, it's not going to happen. It's 2 years. Like it's just going to get worse. Lord, if you're really there, pick up the pieces and show me that you're there and start this healing. Well, a rainbow came through the window. It was pouring. And like, I know rainbows come, but they come at the end of the storm. Well, this was right in the middle of the thunderstorm, and that's the sign I needed. And that was the beginning of the recovery. And it was really hard because I thought, I'm going through this trial. I don't have to work hard to get through it. Well, I did. I had to humble myself. I had to get down on my knees again and say, Lord, I forget how to pray. I forget how to trust you. I don't know the meaning of love. That's been stripped away. You need to teach me that again. I can't even believe when people say they love you. I'd lost all my self-esteem, all my self-respect. And the Lord just took, you know, I was on the way to recovering. And then I moved to England, and that was the best thing. I went to another fellowship over there, and it still took another 2 to 3 years to really recover. And, but, you know, 80% of it, I really wanted to be 80% in recovery before I went to another country. And yeah, the Lord just worked and worked. There was back steps and forward steps, back steps and forward. The condemnation was gone because I knew that the Lord had chosen me as a soldier to go through that for the next person. So the recovery started.
Now, if we can have the next slide up, please. So I guess this is something, obviously you've heard a couple of testimonies today about this, and mental health conditions are just getting worse and worse. If you actually look at some of the surveys done since COVID, the rates of anxiety and depression in the adolescent age group is now so high that it's actually getting harder to find kids who haven't had some sort of struggle than the other way around. And that's the world we're living in. That's the things we're seeing happen. And these stats are just getting worse and worse. Jump to the next slide for me. So depression, 1 in 5. This slide might be getting out of date. I think it's getting very close to 1 in 4 and will rapidly approach 1 in 3. And you've heard the story there of the different things that have happened. One thing I like to bring out for a Spirit-filled Christian, that incapacity to pray. And I'm not sure how many people in here have felt that sort of thing where you know you want to pray, you know you need to pray, you know that prayer is the path forward, but you can't find a way to do it. And that's a very consistent story I hear when I speak to saints who have gone through this. And given those stats, in a room of this many people, there's almost certainly somebody out there who's thinking, yep, that's me. And that's actually the reason we've got this testimony on tonight, is actually to talk to whoever that person is and reassure you that what you're feeling is actually pretty normal and it's how things go. And there are options for you of how to help with that. Asking somebody else to pray for you. Don't ask them to help in any other way. You just get them to pray for you. Or as Sally did, if you ask the Lord to prove himself, if you're Spirit-filled, he's already proved himself once, and there's always something else the Lord is happy to do. He doesn't want us to guess. He wants us to know that he's there, and he wants us to know that he's available. So we're going to jump forward some 20 odd years from that point. So you've just heard a story of pretty deep, dark depression and things pretty hard and a fair bit of work, help from the Lord, help from the brothers and sisters, fair bit of work. But then you get to life's moving forward, married, kids, etc., etc. And can you take us from when you were 40?
So had 2 children. They were 12 and 10, and had a surprise pregnancy at 40, 39, and cried for the first 6 weeks because I just went, oh my goodness, 40, pregnant. And had a really good pregnancy. I was 39 and the doctor said that I had all the right blood pressure, all the right tests, all the right scans, and you get into that high, what do you call it? High risk. Yeah. And so you have to go for all these scans all the time. And the doctor kept saying, I don't know why you're here. It's just like tick, tick, tick. And by that time we were all excited. We were having a little boy, and you've got morning sickness every day, like, 14 hours a day. But that was part of me being pregnant. And got to 38 weeks and 5 days, and I had to have Caesars because I couldn't naturally give because of a motorbike accident. And we got to the Friday and the last scan, and went in, and I was, as you imagine, quite big, and I was due to have the Caesar on the Tuesday, and the doctor's doing the scan, and he said, I'm so sorry, but there's no heartbeat. And my world came crashing down then for my kids and my husband and the life that we were expecting, and we had everything set up. And but my immediate thought was, here we go again. The doctor said that when I went through that nervous breakdown that it would happen again. I would go into another nervous breakdown at one point in my life. And I thought, here we go, like it's on, and I had to be strong for the kids and my husband, but I couldn't be. We had a beautiful boy and nothing was wrong with him. I spent $5,000 on tests to say, hey, it's your fault. You carried him wrongly or you ate something, and nothing was wrong. And the geneticist says, I see this all the time, and this there's times where there's nothing wrong. And I thought the Lord wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that to me, you know, like he might do it in the early stage of the pregnancy. There might be something wrong and take the miscarriage, but not 9 months, like, and wait for 2 kids to have this anticipation of a brother. And I was so cranky, but I was in shock, and then had to have him that night with the Caesar. And, you know, even when Khan, who's an incredible soulmate, came out and all the nurses were crying and they're holding our little boy Riley, the kids were expecting a miracle. They were expecting him to breathe, and he wasn't. And all the nurses were just crying, and everyone, you know, our family and friends that were there were just like, there were no answers. And to this day, there's no answers. And I'm not to ask the Lord why, because for the last 13 years, it has been something that's on my heart every day, inside my heart, saying, why, Lord? Because there was nothing wrong with him. Like, I could understand if there was something wrong, but there wasn't. And why put my kids through that and my husband through? Why? What sort of testimony is that? Well, my biggest testimony is that I didn't really talk for a year, and I grieved heavily, and I had an amazing family network around me, but my life has changed since then, because the joy of the Lord is my strength. So the joy is not happy. The joy is inside my heart. And I walk with this power inside of me, and nothing can touch the relationship that I have with the Lord. And I can't wait to see Riley when he returns. And, you know, I think my kids have watched my husband and I as a married couple pull together as a team. A lot of couples split when they lose a child. And the Lord really used Khan to be his soldier, because I wasn't a very good wife for a year, and I wasn't a mum. So the kids lost a brother and their mum. And the Lord just showed me, no, it wasn't another nervous breakdown. It was grief. And I will get you through every wave of the grief. And we've been through this before with that. Yes, that was different. This is now something that I didn't want to be a soldier for the Lord this time, but it didn't really have a choice. And I haven't really been used in 13 years with another mother that's lost her baby, but I have been used a lot with people that go through grief in the Lord. And the person might have died, you know, in a tragic accident, and it's like, why, Lord, why? It's because the Lord knows that this is not our life here on earth. Our life is to come. And it's not all, and it's good for people. It was good for my kids to know that life is not rosy in the Lord all the time. And when the things that happen to the people in the world, they happen to us just the same, except we've got this coping tool that is incredible. And doctors can't explain it, can you?
Not very well, no. So you listen to that story and you hear somebody say, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And that's the same person who years before that couldn't find the strength to pray. And so I think often we shy away from talking about things that we're uncomfortable about. And we get a bit scared about giving the glory of the Lord for something that we'd rather didn't happen. But when we do that, we actually take away the power of the Lord. So in this situation, that's a pretty hard testimony to give. That's a terrible thing to go through. I've got some idea of what that feels like. We had a kid who, my youngest son, is still alive and has actually been fully healed by the power of the Lord, but he has been close to death a multitude of times. So I've got a degree of understanding, but nowhere near the understanding that you have. And for people listening to this story, you think, oh, I can't find much blessing in that. The blessing is in being able to get through something that people think, well, that's going to break you. That's going to take you away from the Lord. That's going to change how you go. If you look in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, in verses 12 and 13, to paraphrase it, it really talks about when we think we're completely sorted, everything's settled, everything's right, if a temptation comes up, the Lord will also give us a way through it. And the temptations are those things that are common to man. And people do lose children. People have all sorts of things happen in their lives. And being able to give a testimony is very brave, to stand up in front of people, to sit down in front of people and talk about the fact that this has happened in my life. I would absolutely prefer it hadn't happened, but in the middle of something that everyone around me watching me was expecting this to break me, what it did was strengthen my relationship with the Lord. And I think for all of us who, I mean, there's probably very few people in this room who have nothing going on in their life that's causing any distress. We're not really a group of happy clappers where that's the way things work. There's usually something going on in life. And to know that it doesn't actually matter what it is that happens, the Lord is there, takes some of the pressure away of feeling like I've got to find a way through this. There's something I've got to do differently, or et cetera, et cetera. So the healing for me in that story is that you're here and that you have the strength to be able to stand up and give this story, which is something that is very hard to go through and there really isn't an answer to. There's nothing I could say and I actually have had this discussion as a doctor, as a very junior doctor, I've had this discussion and it's not a nice thing. And I, like all the nurses, was in tears. And that's how it works. So really the blessing of the Lord is in sustaining you. And really thank you for giving that testimony.
I think there's one thing I really want to say. When I grew up in the Lord, it was always like looking forward to the next camp and the next rally and the next thing. And it's always like looking forward. Whereas now life is not like that. Life is like, take each day as it comes, take each minute as it comes. Don't plan too much. Don't worry about your material list. I know I can generally say, don't worry about your materialistic things, then you do worry, but they're not anything compared to what we have in store for us. And I've never been so excited about the Lord's return